Alrighty then. So I just saw Game Night and holy shit, am I pleasantly surprised by how good this movie was. It was a lot better than what I was expecting, for sure. You know what? I think what I mean to say is going into this movie, I thought it was going to be really cliche. I thought it was going to be cheesy and hokey and really contrived. And at times it can be those things. I'm not going to deny that for sure, but overall, for the most part, it was just a really solid movie, and I'm really happy about it. First things first, the direction in Game Night is just, it's so good. It's really the core strength of the movie, in my opinion. And the first thing that I got really surprised with this movie is just how good everything looked. It's a really, really good looking movie. I was really impressed with just the cinematography overall. There were a lot of visually appealing shots. There were a lot of creative shots as well. Sometimes using a Jenga set, sometimes being composed in different ways that I would have not thought that a movie such as this, going into it at least, would have employed. And I'm really surprised that the directors of this film took such creative liberty and such artistic liberty in terms of making this movie and making it look the way that it did. It's really good, you know, everything is really crisp and it looks really professional and everything looks really clean. And overall, it just looks like the directors really gave a fuck about making this movie. And in my opinion, it really, really shows. So there are two directors on this film, I just found out. The first one being John Francis Daley, and the second director being Jonathan Goldstein. And they just did such a good job, you know, I'm really impressed. I hope that they keep making movies. I hope they make more comedies such as Game Night, where things are really, really visually stunning, and there's a lot of care taken into the filmmaking aspect of shooting and recording. I think that comedies in particular, especially nowadays, really, the genre is in need of good directors such as them. And yeah, I hope they keep making movies like this. I was really impressed with the establishing shots throughout the film. At first, I was a little caught off guard with how unnatural a lot of the establishing shots looked, you know, in comparison to the rest of the movie where everything is very clean and it's very authentic and it looks very precise. The establishing shots look very unreal. You know, it's obvious they were made in a computer, but I'll be the first one to say I do think that it caught me off guard a little bit, but the more I watched the movie, the more I realized that these establishing shots, they were made to look very unreal. They were made to look like they were made in a computer, and I think specifically they were made to look as though they were in a board game. You know, when I saw these establishing shots, I really started to get the vibe that, oh, like, they wanted to make the world seem like it's a board game, hence, you know, the title of the movie, Game Night. I'll be the first one to admit, it doesn't ever not get distracting. It's distracting throughout the entirety of the movie. You're kind of caught up in how good the movie looks, and then all of a sudden you're presented with this establishing shot that looks very, very fake. It's a little jarring, for sure, and even now, after watching the movie and enjoying the movie, obviously, I don't know if it was the best choice that they could have made. However, I do appreciate the ballsiness of it. I appreciate that the directors had the balls to take a chance, you know, make the movie look a little bit more interesting, do something that stands out a little bit more. And I think that overall, it was a very interesting choice. It was a very artistic choice, in my opinion. And I respect it. I don't know if I liked it necessarily, but I definitely respect the choice that they made because it's different, and I love different in movies. In a time of movies where nothing is different, I love it when something's a little bit different. And not only that, I think that it gets elevated a little bit more because the whole board game aspect, the whole board game aesthetic that they were going for, it really ties back into the entire plot of the movie. So I think overall I give it a thumbs up in terms of those establishing shots. I enjoyed the camera work that the directors put into this movie as well. It's very dynamic and it's very moving and it keeps things visually interesting. I would just like to compare this to the vast majority of comedies nowadays, where in every single scene it's one camera, maybe two cameras, they're completely static, they're not moving, and it's just shot reverse shot over and over again. You know, I think for whatever reason, that is what comedies have become lately, and I don't like that. It's very boring in my opinion. It's very uninteresting to watch. But that's not the case in Game Night. Game Night, you have a lot of moving cameras. You have a lot of dynamic aspects in each scene. And I think that the directors did a solid job at making even the dialogue scenes where not too much is happening on a plot level. They keep it engaging by the way that they move the camera. I would just like to compare this to essentially every other comedy movie that's coming out nowadays, where in every single scene, it's one camera, maybe two cameras. Neither of them are moving. It's shot so uncreatively and so unoriginally that I just end up getting bored. Even comedies that I really enjoy, like Superbad and Bridesmaids, I feel like they don't do a good job at utilizing the camera at all. It's very static, it's very boring, but on the other hand, I think Game Night does this very, very well. Whether it be a very slow zoom on a character's monologue to help you get enthralled in the movie a little bit more, or whether it be a very slow pan during a dialogue scene with many different characters so the audience gets a better understanding of where things are in the set. I think the directors of Game Night utilize the camera really well in a way that helps the audience get a little bit more engaged. There is a scene in this movie that is done all in one take that is just, it's so, so much fun. And they do such a good job at utilizing the camera movement and the characters and the timing of it all. They do such a good job with it. And I think that scene in particular is a testament to just how good the directing of this movie is overall. You know, there's a ton of good parts, but that is the fucking part that I will go back and watch this movie for every single time. It's so good. Last quick thing about the directing. There were a lot of quick cut transitions that were littered all across the beginning half of this movie that I really, really, really enjoyed. It was very Edgar Wright-esque in the sense that, let's say Hot Fuzz or Shaun of the Dead, both directed by Edgar Wright, they used a lot of fast transitions to help move the story along as opposed to just cutting to the very next scene, which feels a little bit jarring. And admittedly, Game Night doesn't do this as well as Edgar Wright movies, not by a long shot. Edgar Wright's a master at it, but it's good. It's fun to watch. It keeps things more engaging, and I feel like for a lot of people, they wouldn't even notice this, but it moves things along really, really seamlessly, and it provides another layer of immersion, at least for me. And it's not a make or break thing. You know, this isn't like what made me love the movie by any means, but I think it was just a really good example of these directors going the extra mile for this project. And you know what, man? I'm really happy with it. I'm really happy with the directing of this movie. There are movies where the acting is the staple of a film. There are movies where the special effects are the staple of a film. And I think for Game Night, the directing is the staple of it. I thought the script was really strong too. I thought it was really evenly paced. I thought it was fun. All throughout the movie, for the most part, I feel like things did start getting a little bit messy towards the third act of the movie, but we'll get into that in a second. Overall, though, yeah, I thought it was a good script. I thought it was a really strong script. There were a couple of self-aware moments of dialogue throughout the script that I really, really appreciated, because had it not been for these moments of self-awareness, I would have gotten really annoyed at how cheesy some parts of the movie got. And instead of ignoring them and letting me get annoyed, I'm glad that the script included these self-aware moments of dialogue, because it really made a joke out of the cheesiness. It was smart enough and mature enough to say, like, hey, this is a little bit ridiculous, but just go along with it. And I appreciated it. You know, I was able to suspend my disbelief as a result of those self-aware moments of dialogue. Of course, you know, this is a comedy movie, and I'm really happy to say that the humor, it landed really well for me for the most part. I'll be the first one to say, though, I do like outlandish and awkward humor, and there was a lot of outlandish and awkward humor in Game Night. But I do think that the script is strong enough, and there is enough variety in the humor that there's going to be a little bit for everybody, I would like to think. There's an outright stupid character in this movie, and 9 out of 10 times, I really, really hate stupid characters that are stupid just to be funny. I really dislike dumb humor for the most part. However, the actor who plays him, Billy Magnussen, does such a good job at being stupid, yes, very stupid. However, he's so good at being engaging and charming and likable and fun to watch all at the same time. And I'm sure this ties back into the directing a little bit, but I love the fact that they made a cliche character good. Because he is a cliched character, but they made him a very good cliched character. They executed him really, really well. And I'm happy with it. They did a good job with him. And I think that's a testament to the humor of the movie as well. And you know what? Just piggybacking off of that, I think that the performances in this movie are really, really good. There's a lot of chemistry in the movie. which is definitely what kind of sells it the most for me besides the direction, is the chemistry amongst all of the actors. They're a lot of fun to watch on screen. Of course there's good directing. Of course the script is very solid, but if you're asking me, a script can't make good chemistry. You know, that has to happen amongst a lot of good, seasoned, capable actors. And that's exactly what we get in Game Night. Everyone's a very good actor in their own right. You know, you have Jason Bateman, who's great. You have Rachel McAdams, who is fantastic in this movie. I think I've laughed the most at Rachel McAdams' scenes than anybody else's scenes. Lamorne Morris from New Girl is very good. You know, everyone is just good. Everyone is really good and is good together, and it's just such a great dynamic on screen. There are action set pieces in this movie. There are car chases. There are gunfights here and there that happen, and they should be exciting, but I found that I enjoyed the scenes where all of the friends were together the most. And I think that is just a huge, huge, huge sign of just how good everyone is on the cast, in the cast. Okay, alrighty. Now, of course, this movie is not perfect, so allow me to go ahead and say some of the things that I felt like the movie did not do so well. I felt like the third act of this movie was a little bit of a clusterfuck. Something that I really liked about this movie is that even though in the first two acts it doesn't really get too outrageous, it's still a movie where you kind of have to suspend your disbelief a little bit to really get the most out of your experience. But the third act, it was just, I think it went a little bit too big. A little too sensational, especially for a movie that I feel really shines when it's more on the grounded side of things. At the end of the movie, there were a couple of big action set pieces that happened, which honestly, I really didn't find them too interesting on an execution level, and I definitely didn't find them too necessary, especially in terms of the overall grand scheme of the movie. Like, yes, on a plot level, these things had to happen because they were in the script, but what I mean is, I feel like I would have enjoyed the third act a lot more if they kept it as relatively grounded as they did with the first two acts of the film. That's all I'm saying. I never really felt like the side conflict between Jason Bateman's character and Rachel McAdams' character was ever really that genuine, which is a big deal because as the plot goes on, the script really wants it to be a big part of the story, but I don't think it was ever really fleshed out well enough. I think that they glossed over it whenever they did decide to address it in the film. It just, in a movie that was so well written for the most part, I think that that part was just a glaringly weak part of the script. Moreover, I wasn't too much of a fan of the action sequences in this movie. There was a hand-to-hand fight scene or two, there was a shootout or two, there was a car chase or two, but I didn't really like any of them. I wasn't really interested at all. I found myself wanting them to end, for sure. You know, I found them a little bit boring. I found myself honestly waiting for them to end so that the characters could get back together and start interacting and making jokes with each other. Because that's the best part of the movie, in my opinion. That's when the movie is working its best. And when the movie is working its best, it really, really works. But not so much with the action sequences. They felt a little cliche and contrived. I find it funny that this movie spent millions and millions of dollars, you know, putting special effects into this film that really didn't need it. You know, it didn't need these action sequences too much. Maybe one or two, but not nearly as much as they did for this movie. And I think that the experience kind of suffered as a result. There was at least one scene in this movie where a character was supposed to be crying real tears, and the effort put in by the actor playing this character was just so piss poor. There were no tears whatsoever. She just looked like she was constipated, honestly. But I think overall, given the tone of the movie, I can definitely see the directors telling her not to actually cry because it would have dragged the tone of the movie down a little bit. However, though, if you're asking me, if you're going to include a character crying in your movie, you should actually have them cry, or you should write in something different. However, that's a very small criticism. There was a moment where the sound mixing was really bad, I guess. That's basically it, though. Honestly, I really did not outright dislike too many parts about this movie. Overall, I think the movie did a lot of things well, and I think it did very few things badly. I feel the same way about Game Night as I do about Horrible Bosses. For both movies going into them, I went in blind. I didn't know anything about the plots at all, and quite frankly, I really enjoyed both movies. You know, I enjoy Game Night a lot, the same way that I enjoy Horrible Bosses. I will say, though, I do think Game Night is a better movie, not just on a subjective I personally enjoyed it level, but on a technical filmmaking level, I think Game Night is just such a solid movie overall. Really, really solid. I'm talking about this movie really, really highly because I'm just surprised that it's good. I'm surprised that it's a good movie because I walked into it thinking it was going to be a cookie cutter, generic, hokey, cheesy piece of shit. And it was the exact opposite. It is so solid and so enjoyable. I really wanted to give this movie a 7 out of 10, which is a very good grade for me. Just for your own reference, I gave Spider-Man Homecoming a 7 out of 10, which I very much enjoyed Spider-Man Homecoming. But when it comes to Game Night, the third act of this movie just brought it down a little bit too much for me, and as a result, I'm going to give Game Night a 6 out of 10. But a very strong 6 out of 10. You should all go watch it. Thanks for watching.